Going to have a little bit of an interruption while we get things underway for Ric Seagar. Here he comes, he's on his way. Commander from the Royal Australian Air Force. He spent 23 years in the service. One of his highlights was an exchange to the Royal New Zealand Air Force, where he flew in their formation aerobatic team in Strike Master aircraft. He was number 2 in that formation, and back in Australia he flew with the Roulettes. He was number 2 in that formation, and had quite a number of years' experience in that role, among other things. So with a wealth of experience in the RAAF, here's Ric Seagar to tell us about the Royal Australian Air Force. The title of his talk is The Roulettes, the Marquis and Me.
A mighty humbling experience when asked to talk to the group, considering the topics I've heard over the last year from people who are flying gliders in World War II. It's a vast jump to this sort of more modern things. So once again, thanks for having me along. Old Fliers group, and the name being what it is, I left the RAF in 1991 after 23 years. Doesn't even really seem like 22 years ago, and that's about as old Fliers as I can get. And looking around the room, I'd say there's a few of them about my vintage that are around here, 11. During the time I was posted to the Central Flying School in 1983 and had the opportunity to fly with the Roulettes. And that was a little unusual because they were forming a 7 aircraft team from the basic 5 aircraft team for the Diamond Jubilee year. And chap John Simmons, who was flying number 2, got posted back to flying the Mirages, and needed a number 2. And they knew I'd been to New Zealand and flown in that team as number 2, so the boss said, "We need number 2, you're Ric, into the aeroplane." It was not without a bit of trepidation I took that over. And what I'd like to talk about here is the formation of the 7 aircraft team, how it worked, it only just worked, and what led on from there, including some of the sequence designs and some of the reasons we did certain things. If we'd like to roll the video. Yeah, this was taken as we were coming into Adelaide, so there's the 8 aircraft there. That was about as the 7, even the 8 was as many Mackies as you could formation aerobatic. You've got 2 wide and 2 deep. We could never do 9 like the Red Arrows, and we were quite flat out doing the 7. The idea was to fly wingtips lined up, and you depending on the turbulence and such of the day, you tended to fly between 4 to maybe 6 feet apart on the wingtips, which was quite close enough at times. This particular video work was by the commanding officer at the time who came out to meet us. It was just like to hold this manoeuvre. Can you freeze frame that, please? Just there. This was a traditional manoeuvre that the Roulettes have been doing ever since they had the 5-ship formation team. It's a vertical bomb burst. From about where you see it, the 2 outer wingmen are about to turn and roll 90. The 2 behind the leader roll 35, and you do a vertical bomb burst and crossover at the bottom. It had been done for years and years and years. It wasn't all that hard to do. It got awfully close at the bottom sometimes, but it did require a lot of training. And I found the manoeuvre very hard to train some of the guys. We didn't have the resources, we didn't have the time. And when I took over the team after the 7 aircraft, this manoeuvre went, and it's never been flown since. The other problem with it, when you crossed at the bottom, 3 of the aircraft were actually crossing over the crowd. And if anything unfortunate did happen and you hit, you would have put 2 aeroplanes into the crowd. And we got away with it for a number of years, frightened ourselves to death a few times, and decided to give it away. So you'd like to run that one. Thank can't see each other now. As you come down the other side, the leader completes it. 4 misses a lead, 3 misses 4, 2 misses 3, and 5 misses 2. And you just about run through the same frame at the bottom there. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh at 300 knots. And
I think we're professional enough not to make it a gamble, but we can't gamble. We go very close. It's the opposition, you know, is that the name comes from. We get a lot of close opposition.
the basic big formation, that was a good one to fly. That's was the lead at the time for Ernest. That was his favourite manoeuvre. That particular one, he used to G it up to about 4.5 Gs there rather than the traditional 4. He said it felt good. We always shut down the wing with about 5.5 G. This next one they call the rhombus. That's myself at the front, top right, moving into line abreast. And we barrel rolled that manoeuvre. And I was waiting for the show that I fell out of it. And we did the entire season. So hold it there again, please, Brian. Without falling out of it. The mirror formation, you can do this with the 7 aircraft, and again with the 6 aircraft, the Roulettes still do it today. Bob Graham on top there is leading. And you guys may have met the examiner of Ambert Armour Fox a million years ago. That's Foxy flying the bottom one. Speaking to them, it didn't matter what Bob did to roll inverted. You cannot roll the aircraft inverted and let you think you're doing it and be exactly on line. It always moves a little bit in the direction of roll. So as you can see, Foxy's having to move across to get back underneath him. So leading that mirror, Bob would eyeball the crowd centre, roll it inverted, and he's got 30 seconds inverted from the inverted flight fuel. So roll it inverted, push the stopwatch, and wait till he felt Arnie come underneath him. Arnie flew about 1.5 metres, slightly offset towards the crowd, so they could see a little bit of the airframe. And as he actually got under it, Bob said the funny part we learned, the bow wave off Arnold's aeroplane would actually push the inverted one up. And he said, I used to feel him come in, I couldn't see him. He said, as I felt it move, I used to pull the stick towards him and lower the nose to keep it on altitude. He actually lowered, he said, the Mackie flies about 8 degrees nose up in the inverted, and he said it was half that attitude, so I'd pull it down. Nowadays you will occasionally see the PC-9s do it. They've got a large fuselage split between the angles. So as they run here, you'll see the fuselage is a lot more parallel than you generally see nowadays. Thanks, Brian. Fox is moving into position now. Be a little bit closer than that. And now Bob can start to lower his nose on top of him. They flew this for 6 months and got some great shots from it. Some of the shots you'd swear the tails were overlapped. Speed brakes out, back out of position, right, only goes out. Back onto the main element of the team again. We nicknamed this one the donut formation. It was Arnold and Bob were back in the team, and the soloist had left, so it was the 6 of us.
At times we're being subjected to 4.5 G.
That's Bob talking in the background, if you can hear it there on that audio.
It means
It's
that you're standing
saying
there
we're using
just
about
in
4.5
G.
G.
As you turn a corner, then you get a force that wants to throw you out of the corner. That's called G, and of course, the faster you go around the corner, the tighter you turn it, then you get pushed into the aircraft. That's G forces. In other words, you'll be 4.5 times your own body weight at the time. It makes it a little harder because at this stage you're still trying to maintain the aircraft
Well,
a few
the
inches.
7 aircraft formation now, we used to keep it in a relatively straight line.
Pounds in your hand each
It was
time.
so long the formation used to bend, particularly to a barrel, and get a really good bend in the formation.
Very, very.
But we just keep it straight. There's the Aerobatics exchange at the back there, for that position over the top of that one. Get back in here. This was one of my favourite ones on the media right at the leader there. And it was a really nice level pull. I used to quite enjoy it. This was the closing manoeuvre. The soloist Simon Ford flew into the formation. He used to lie occasionally until me called in before it was, so the leader would relax. And then the 2 guys at the back would close over. They could see what was going on, we couldn't.
Instantly rewarded.
This became the guts of the 5-ship end of sequence display. And we called it the cascade. So you loop this manoeuvre, and then all split and cascade across the crowd, so you weren't going head on, you're all separating, and there was no chance of any close shaves overhead the venue. As you're approaching the vertical there, everybody rolled about 15 degrees away from each other.
The Roulettes obviously have a pretty good safety record.
And
Yes.
Cascade go.
Yes. We haven't lost any aircraft, that's what you mean.
We stole the Red Arrow 6 for Prince of Wales feathers. This was actually taken before the show, but plugged in afterwards from the broadcast, and it actually flies over Adelaide CBD. On the actual show, the same thing happened. And as we flew over the CBD, where are we? Bottom right-hand corner, you'll see Adelaide Cricket Ground coming up. After the actual show, this is exactly the manoeuvre we did. Radar vectored us over the cricket ground. Australia was playing England at the time. We're on the left-hand turn just like that. There's the cricket ground. And the leader reversed it. Number 6 ran into number 7. Right over the top of the cricket ground. And cracked the nav light on the number 6 and bent the elevator horn on the number 7. I have no idea how we got away with it. And Channel 10 were waiting at Edinburgh after the show to interview us. They didn't even notice only 5 of us taxied in. We left those 2 out on the runway. Bit of formation through the cloud there.
Rick, can I ask how the timing was organised? I mean, how do you
Not long.
almost impossible surely to react and maintain station?
It was difficult. As Bob was saying, wait till this little bit of video finishes. As they taxi in, Brian, if you mind holding your seat, taxi in. The trouble was the G-force, and we took Chris Spiro flying. I'm sure you know who Chris Spiro, Aerobatic Bob, is. He might have been flying, 8.5 or 9G. We're only using 4.5. We took him flying one day, and in a laser or anything like Adrian may fly around here. You're pulling 7 and 8, but it's only instantly. It's not on for long. Whereas we're holding 4.5, and it's on for 30 seconds or more around the various manoeuvres, and that's where it get hard. You're holding 4.5G on your hand, and if you hit a bump or you relax just that little bit, you drop 3 or 4 feet, and you couldn't afford to drop that far. The Romulus manoeuvre we saw there that I took out as well was a line abreast barrel roll for me. And it was a deadly thing, because if you went into the barrel roll and dropped slightly low, which tended to happen at the point of roll, it really looked like you'd gone down and under. And you had to say to yourself, no, I just have to pull it back up. I don't have to go wide. It was a lot better than the Strike Master I used to fly. It had manual trims. At least the Mackie had electric trims, and you get a bit of help there occasionally. Yeah, so after the 7 aircraft, we must have done about a dozen shows, a million rehearsals for it. We finished it at the Diamond Jubilee. Every manoeuvre worked. A couple of the manoeuvres that were very hard, so we banned, or I took out from the 5 aircraft formations. And I ended up with the lead, and we reformed it in May 81. The first thing I got was a call from an ophthalmologist called John Colby, a famous doctor in Victoria, very much in the Fred Hollows type mould. One claim to fame, he designed the Apollo glasses that Neil Armstrong Sonny's wore on the moon. And he was very big with RFDS in outback New South Wales, and he rang me and said, as I was wearing glasses, I knew him. He said, how do I get the Roulettes to Broken Hill? I said, what for? He said, for RFDS. They're having a show there, and the New South Wales government said they'll back them dollar for dollar, whatever they raise. He said, if I can get you guys there, I reckon we can get $20,000. win-win all round. That was my first air show. Going out there was a bit of a drama because the Mackie only had an NZB in it, UHF radio only. So, and it was an IFR day. So it was an IFR flight to Broken Hill with absolutely minimum fuel with NDB only. And I rang Melbourne Air Traffic and I said, I need every bit of radar assistance you can give me before we fall off your scope to get to Broken Hill. And we got to the planned top of descent and the needle was on the nose and the fuels were on minimums and the red light gauge was coming on the fuel minimums. A few of the guys were calling minimum fuel. Well, this is not good. You know, we're still on IMC, but this should be top of descent. And it was so relieving when suddenly over the NDB came Broken Hill Flight Service saying, for the Roulettes, this is Broken Hill on the NDB, weather is cat okay. And it was great to have those flight service days, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, if you'd like to roll that please, Brian. This is again it was a Channel 10 show from Broken Hill. Except for the number 4, he was a new man. The rest of us were out of the old 7 aircraft team. So we were used to flying very tight. You had to fly a little tighter than normally to do the 7. And all of us have said that it was a great team to fly. The others, they changed. Members was fine as well, but this was the nucleus of the 7 ship. It was a very, very strong team. We all thought so.
Who's that?
It's a young bloke, isn't he? With hair.
Good looking.
It was as cold as Hades up there. Hence the jackets
And are the
on.
pilots all just
Which
stuck
we
with
wore
it?
through the show as well.
We're all flying instructors from Central Flying School, and this is really part-time.
Well, Rick, I guess you have to trust the guy on your wing. How bonding is that trust you've got?
Oh, it's implicit. We do a couple of head-on passes during the sequence. One of them is a horizontal 360-degree turn, and we've got in excess of 800 kilometres head-on closing speed. I'm flying one aeroplane, and Bob Graham here is flying the other one. We aim approximately one aircraft width apart, so we're about 35 feet apart, head-on at 800 kilometres closing speed. I just fly the aeroplane straight and level, and Bob takes all avoiding action, so I
Before he crossed, I couldn't
trust
stand
him
it.
totally,
Went for it.
as he would trust me, no doubt.
It's half a runway with delay.
So if you make a boo-boo...
Well, we don't make a bit.
No.
We got rid of the line of breast barrel roll and moved back to the big barrel roll with this team. And it's one of the nicer barrel rolls I've ever seen. It was a particularly nice day. There was no bumps in the air. And the barrel is absolutely on line. I rarely saw them done this well. This maneuver. That's not bad, is it?
Yeah.
Right through there, that's the hard bit.
Jeez, that's good.
Watch the outside number 4 as he changes position here. He nearly
Okay,
hits you
just
on the
starting
tip
air
tank.
force. Looks like
Right
a
at
pretty
the top of the
glamorous
screen.
life, Rick. Is it really all that exciting?
It is exciting, and it's rewarding
Oh.
for achieving what we can do.
I
But
didn't know that until I saw the video later.
no, it's we do 15 odd shows
Stall
a year.
clearing.
We do a lot of practice for them. We do a lot of Monday to Friday instructional work anyway. We don't get days off for our weekend work.
The only difference between the 7 and the 5 is we didn't have the 2 extra guys on each side.
Because of our blue suits and the smartly painted aeroplanes. But it's more hard work than anything else.
What would be the high speed you get up to?
During the show, in knots,
The soloist is flying in the middle there, Simon Ford.
it's around...
And he again was the soloist from the 7 aircraft show.
No, there's no
And,
risk.
He used to practice hard as the rest of us did, but he really saved the good ones for the live show.
One could say it's safer than
He
driving
pulls up for a hammerhead manoeuvre here.
Harry Bridge and Peak Hour.
In the practices he probably used 85, 86 degrees vertical.
And a little bit faster.
But on the day he put it right on the tail. One of the good ones, Mac. This is a fabulous manoeuvre that Simon did from the back as well, from the swan barrel. Look at that angle, nobody's moved there. The number 3 in line in the centre is literally up between the two back guys. And the new cascade. The other good part of the cascade is it's on the downwind and land. There's no skimming all over the sky trying to catch up to each other again. This will shortly stop if we hold it there as well. Thanks, Brian. The other funny part of the Broken Hill show, Arnold Fox we were talking about. Arnold came from Broken Hill. And part of the deal was I used to lead the team out, I'd fly the display, but somebody else led back. They got experience leading the aircraft, and I'd fly their position. And Foxy asked me, could he do the trip back? He was a Broken Hill boy and he wanted to do the departure out of Broken Hill. He flew number 5, so I'd fly the 5 slot. And once we made that change, he was roulette 1 and I was roulette 5. I didn't fly roulette 5, really roulette 1. I'd fly his position. So he took off out of Broken Hill and he beat the bejesus out of the place. I'm trying to hang on the 5 slot saying, Arnold, please give up. Nothing I could do at the time. Not that I did anyway. After the Broken Hill show, I say that was my first show live, we had an Air Vice Marshal about who was asking me what were the benefits of the roulettes. I had no idea. I said, I just do the job, boss. You know, if you don't want the roulettes, you can give it away. It doesn't matter. It's just a job. I can't quantify the benefits of it. He wanted to know, what exposure we're getting. Where was our recruiting coming from country towns? What was it doing? I don't know to this day. But he did make it quite clear he wanted to get a big bang for the buck. And the biggest bang we could get for our buck was, move it into electronic media and get big shows. I was aware that the Red Arrows, for example, did the British Grand Prix. We weren't doing motor racing events. We didn't have any Grand Prix in Australia until '85. Our biggest deal was the Bathurst car race. And that was in a long weekend in October, and most long weekends we were doing a display somewhere, and not at Bathurst. And I'd noticed over a couple of years that comes 4:30, you always close the air show, you're the last act on. A lot of people left, gone to watch the last hour of the car race. And I couldn't quantify it, but if there was 3,000 people at an air show, I wanted to do it in front of the 3,000 people, not the 300 who were left at the death knock. So we rang Channel 7 and said, we've got a deal for you. And we wanted to be part of the pre-production activity for the Bathurst car race. I thought if we're going to do a show on a long weekend, let's do it there. We've got 40,000 people on the ground, and they said an estimating TV interview of 1.2 million. And they had to think about it, said, love to try it. So I went up to Bathurst and had a talk with the pre-production people. And I said, the only deal is we want 6 minutes, uninterrupted. No ads, no dancing girls, no cars. We want 6 minutes. And he said, you've got to be joking. I said, well, this is a really expensive deal. That's the condition. So he said, all right, can you be here at 9:02? So at 9 a.m, an hour before the car race started, he was going to run 2 minutes of ads, drive everybody nuts. But at the end of 2 minutes, he said that the cost per 10 seconds was figures I couldn't believe. And he said, if we want you here at 9:02 and you've got your 6 minutes, how close to 9:02 can you be? Well, it'd be 9:02, wouldn't we, mate? Yeah. Plus or minus nothing, of course we could. We're used to doing Anzac Day parades and 11th of November times. It's not that hard. I just set up a point 5 miles back from the venue, and I got there 8 minutes earlier, provided we left there at 300 knots at 5 miles a minute from 5 miles away. It's not going to get too far out of time. So that was the deal. We had to fly it out of RAF Base Richmond, just out of Sydney, obviously up to Bathurst. And a week beforehand, I rang the Sydney air traffickers and said, this is the deal, he wants us there at 9:02. I'm absolute minimum fuel for this out of Richmond. Once we push the start buttons, this is on the go. I can't stop it, and I can't afford to be late. I've got no flex at all. So when we call for airways clearance, there can be no delays. We are rolling, and if you don't give me a clearance, we'll have to sort it out later. But don't put me in that position. And I spoke to the controller who'd be rostered for that day, and it ran like a charm. We pushed the buttons at 8:30. The only thing that was difficult for the day is the OC of the base refused to let us have breakfast in the officer mess in the flying suits. Which you wouldn't have breakfast with the troops, but that's all right. If you like to take it off there, Brian, this is the Channel 7 production of the, this will end shortly for the Bathurst car race. For those who have ever done water skiing, I know you have, Brian, the conditions were like water skiing on glass. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning and there was not a bump in the air. It was absolutely calm. And I was authorised to 500 feet in the manoeuvres. The CO at the time was Bruce Byron. And I said, when does an aerobatic manoeuvre become a non-aerobatic manoeuvre? Because I was authorised to 200 feet when it was non-aerobatic. So I used that flexibility a bit in this show.
Very, very competitive in the Royal Australian Air Force to get a berth in the Roulettes. The average team member spends approximately 12 months per unit. It's very hard work, exhilarating work.
It's awful.
And it's the show window for the RAAF to the Australian public.
Three of these guys still fly for Qantas.
The RAAF Roulettes formation team formed back in 1970. They've continued to perform at venues throughout Australia since their inception. The RAAF's only aerobatic team and have formed flying instructors of Central Flying School at East Sale.
The aircraft are Mackie jet trainers.
Roulette number 1, squadron leader Ric Seagar. Number 2, Lieutenant Leroy Gordon. Roulette number 3, Flight Lieutenant Ian Taylor. And Roulette 4, Flight Lieutenant Neil Mackenzie.
Roulette 5 might put the
Wing Commander Bruce Byron is the non-flying commander of the team.
That's for the Broken Hill
Next
show.
Roulette himself.
They were rolling this big manoeuvre. They're all new guys in this team.
The Central Flying
This is
School.
faultless as well.
The display
As I say,
commenced
it's
with
so
the team
smooth. This is
running
just a
in from
beautiful
behind
barrel
the
roll.
crowd and pulling the leader's loop. The speed on entry is 800 kilometres per hour.
81 October.
On now at the second turn of leaders at the top of the loop.
You can see by the
Heading
smoke,
towards the
there's not
crowd,
a
hidden change
movement in
into a
it.
Vic formation is made.
When we went up there for the rehearsals, when I was talking to him, we worked out the camera angles in, because there's only so
They turn left,
much angle you can put on the
past left
car racing camera.
executing a barrel roll in Vic.
But they were a bit concerned that we're a bit too high, because this is the outside broadcast helicopter that runs around the tracks.
In this
And
wing
quite
over
exciting,
formation
down under
changes to
100
a
feet,
hard
doing
five.
the relay from the car. So I said, can't you get down there? I said, I'm not allowed to, and there's a bloody big hill in the background.
Off to the right. Then it's wing over left and change back to the rhombus. During all these formations, wingtip clearance, believe it or not, is about 4 feet. 4 feet wingtip clearance, and they're travelling at 800 kilometres per
The
hour.
next manoeuvre was the card 5, and as I've been saying, it was so smooth, and they wanted it a bit lower, so I lowered it a little bit with this card 5 flyby. Leroy Gordon was flying up on my wing, said to me later on, there's a lot of people from Queensland there. I said, why do you say that? He said, I was looking at the number plates, mate. We got back to sale on the CA said they particularly liked the Card 5 flyby certified. I said, Byron was in it up. You turn the volume up here, you'll hear Gary Wrong. They said they dropped their mic, they're all ducked at the time.
A very spectacular performance there from the RAAF Roulettes. They come in for one last salute. Victory sweep over the circuit for the Roulettes. Coming in low, over the back of the garage area behind the pits and up. The Card 5 formation. Now they're going to wheel around to the top of the mountain. They'll turn and come back, I'm afraid, straight at our commentary position and very low. It's 6 kilometres round this circuit,
Up for a while.
and they're doing all these manoeuvres pretty well within the boundaries of the track.
Sometimes you just feel the need.
That's not a bad performance when you're travelling at 800 kilometres per hour. Not a great display. Squadron leader Ric Seagar, Flight Lieutenant Leroy Gordon, Flight Lieutenant Ian Taylor, Flight Lieutenant Neil McKenzie, and Flight Lieutenant Mike Wood.
Got Woody this time.
Here they come. Back into the rhombus formation. Ready for what's known as the bomb burst, as the finale to this great performance. Very low, over the back, over the top, pit straight and overhead. The RAAF Roulettes. Absolutely fantastic performance by the Roulettes. They've just added so much to the build-up, and what a hand they received.
I say the first of the motor race supports we did. And when you think about it, you're just part of the pre-production day. You know, the next year, John Simmons was leading, and they said 5 minutes max, not 6. And if something happens, and that was the year that Dick Johnson's Green Falcon hit the tree, and they wanted to televise its repair and such, and that took precedence, so Simo got about 3 minutes. And as you know, nowadays they fly the MotoGPs at Phillip Island, they do all the Grand Prix, they do the Gold Coast events, and you don't get any airtime. You'll be told there's the Roulettes in the background. Maybe it's still a benefit, but I thought at the time, if you're going to do it, you wanted to get some bang for your buck, and we were quite lucky to do it in those years. I left the Roulettes with it all being intact, and I got a chance to go to the UK, at the home of the Red Arrows at RAF Scampton, watching them fly. And they did a manoeuvre called the Snake Loop, where they'd all be in line astern, flying a beam the crowd, and with about a half-second pitch rate difference. So one to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., and get the smoke doing these loops. And you'd end up with, in their case, 7 aircraft about 200, 300 metres apart each at the bottom. They turn off and the sync repair would come on and something else would happen. So I rang the team leaders, John Simmons at the time, and said, this is a great looking manoeuvre, have a think about it. And it shouldn't be hard to do. So they did it with 4 aircraft, and it looked great. They'd finish the manoeuvre, turn off stage, and leave the soloist on. And that was flown through Simo's time, and then someone else, and then into Jeff Trappett's team. So now we're getting up into around about 80, 87, 88, forget. And they were practicing it over the base, at the actual 500 feet at the low level height. And into the manoeuvre and then into the rejoin. This is what happened.
In mid-air, but amazingly their pilots escaped with just minor back injuries. The jets were part of the Air Force Aerobatic team, the Roulettes, which was practicing over East Victoria.
The entire Roulette team was in the air over the Sale Air Force Base in eastern Victoria when the accident happened, while they were practicing for this weekend's Canberra Air Show. Two of the Mackie jets, Roulette 1 and Roulette 4, collided as the squadron was joining up in formation after a looping manoeuvre. Eyewitness News cameraman Shane Dyson was in a following aircraft, filming the Roulettes as a preview to a display at Expo 88 in Brisbane. He says everyone remained calm, despite the shock of the drama unfolding in front of them.
The pilots went into their set pattern. I think I was the only one that was sort of in any sort of worrying mode. They all seemed to have it all off pat. And how did you feel yourself at the time? It all happened so quickly. It's just something like watching movies, I suppose. Like you'd see something set up for Spielberg. It just instantly, just bang, it just happened in front of your eyes.
Shane's pictures show how fast it all happened, and in slow motion, how lucky the following crew were not to be hit by flying debris. 41-year-old Flight Lieutenant Dick Crispin lost control of his aircraft and had to eject. His plane crashed in a fireball only 600 metres from a farmhouse to the northeast of the RAF base between Sale and Lake Wellington. Squadron leader Jeff Trafford managed to control his Mackie and made a belly land.
From that, I was appointed as the president of the Board of Inquiry to find out why that one happened. None of us knew why. Certainly didn't think anything like that would ever happen. And as you would guess, it came down to training, came down to selection of the guys. Procedures weren't documented. Various techniques of how to do it was passed from father to son without follow-up. And it changed the face on the management of the Roulettes, and it really changed the places of where you did shows. That show, for example, the next show was over Canberra City. And if that happened over there, it probably would have ended up in one of the suburbs. There was an Air Commodore at the time, Bob Greenwood, said to me after that prank, he said, there was an Albert Park Twilight show. He said, where would the wreckage ended up if that had been on? I said, probably Doncaster. So they had to get back into doing shows at show venues, not over the MCG or over Albert Park or over Canberra. And that was done for many, many years. I notice it's sneaking back in now that the teams are back over the cities again, but one hopes it doesn't happen. Ryan's just signaling here, we're running out of time. That's just a little bit of video shot from inside, from the number 5 aircraft. You can see where the tip tank of the next one is. That was shot from a very old-fashioned Sonic Betacam, one of those great big cameras. That was, we removed the back ejection seat and set it on the ejection seat rail. And it was cleared for one flight in that aircraft with that particular pilot, not above 5,000 feet. This is what the barrel roll, the big barrel, looks like. As you turn on the inside here, he has to fly under the number 3. There he goes, under him. Get through the inverted, and as they accelerate away from him, he flies back into position again. From the ground, you don't see that. Well, thanks very much. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Can I ask, of the room, how many formation endorsed pilots have we got here? Have any of you done anything like that?
At that speed, never.
Would you want to do anything like that? I think part of the excitement of watching air shows is, are they going to crash? Am I right?
No.
But they say that for the pilots that are part of that, they're having an easy day at the office because the only one who's really flying that is the fellow up front. All the rest have just got to maintain station. How hard can that be? But the way the aircraft jostle around, they're 3 foot up, 4 foot down, rather worrying. But Rick, truly, a rather relaxed talk. Thank you. Very informative, and you've just confirmed one thing. There's no way in hell I'm going to be part of the Roulettes now or in the future. So, thank you very much.